I moved to this rain-soaked house a week ago. I was 34 and needed to find peace and inspiration after my breakup. I thought the quiet would help my creativity. The house was at the end of a long cul-de-sac. It was old, creaking with every gust of wind. Rain fell hard against the windows, a constant patter that I tried to ignore. That first night was still and dark. I was cozy with my hot coffee and my laptop, trying to write. But soon, my head was spinning. I heard a light tapping from above. I thought it was just the house settling or maybe the wind pushing something. I shook it off and went back to work, but the noise didn't go away. The sound kept going, a rhythm I couldn't ignore. My heart sped up. I should have been scared, but I convinced myself it was nothing. The next night was worse. I barely slept. I kept hearing the footsteps again. They felt closer this time, like someone was walking around. I thought I was imagining it. The shadows moved around in my vision, but I didn't see anyone. I was just too tired. Those corners felt alive, and I could almost feel a gaze like I wasn't alone. I didn't feel safe in my own home. On the third night, I was restless. The whispers mixed with the rain sounded too real. I wasn't sure if it was in my head. My skin felt cold. I sat up, straining to listen. It sounded like someone was speaking, but I couldn't understand the words. Terrified, I tried to focus on my writing to drown it out. I closed my eyes, but I kept seeing those shadows flickering, moving just out of sight. I felt an urge to check upstairs. Maybe I would find nothing. I made my way up the creaky stairs, the wood groaning under me. At the top, I paused, listening. Nothing. But then the footsteps started again, louder this time. I held my breath and followed the sound deeper into the house. My hands were shaking, but I thought it could just be my imagination. I reached the second bedroom, where the sound was strongest. I opened the door and looked around. Nothing was there. I peered into the closet. It was empty, aside from some old clothes. Just as I was about to leave, I heard it again, a soft shuffle behind me. My heart raced. I turned around, ready to face whatever it was. But there was just silence and darkness. Then, I felt something brush against my arm. I gasped and jerked back. There was nothing there. Just the empty air and the sound of rain outside. I couldn't swallow the fear rising in my throat. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I rushed back downstairs, desperate for the warm glow of my laptop. By the end of that night, I was sure of one thing: I didn't belong in that house. It felt alive, filled with echoes of the past. And as the rain continued to fall, I knew whatever was there, watching me, wasn't going to let me go easily. The next day, I spent most of my time avoiding thoughts of the night before. I pushed myself out the door for a walk, hoping fresh air would clear my head. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still cloudy, heavy with gray. I wandered through the neighborhood, feeling disconnected from everything around me. Just down the street, I spotted a small cafe with a welcome sign. I went inside, ordering a coffee and a pastry. As I waited, I noticed an older woman sitting alone at a corner table. She kept glancing out the window, a worried expression on her face. I debated whether to strike up a conversation, wanting to blend into normalcy, but I couldn't find the courage. That evening, back in the house, I tried writing again. The laptop glowed in the dim light, but the words felt trapped. I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. I kept looking over my shoulder, the sense of being observed growing stronger. I thought about the woman at the cafe. Was she worried about something? Or was it just my imagination, picking up her unease? As the night crept in, I decided to explore the rest of the house. I checked every room, hoping to find something to distract me from my racing thoughts. I opened a door that led to a small attic. The stairs creaked and protested loudly beneath me. But curiosity pulled me up, one step at a time. The attic was a time capsule, filled with old furniture covered in dust sheets, boxes stacked high, and rusted tools. I could barely make out shadows in the corners, but as I moved deeper inside, I felt something amiss. The air was thick, almost alive, and I could taste the dust in my mouth. In one corner, I found an old trunk. The latch was broken, hanging open. I hesitated, but my curiosity drove me to look inside. My breath caught when I noticed an assortment of faded photographs, yellowed with age. I picked one up, and my heart dropped. It was a family photo, faces smiling back at me, but the woman closely resembled the one I had seen at the cafe. Was it a coincidence? Then I noticed something else. Each photo had a date scribbled on the back. They were decades old, stretching back to the early 60s. I thumbed through them, each revealing generations of a family I didn't know. With each picture, an unsettling feeling washed over me. What had happened to them? Just as I was about to put the trunk back, a loud bang echoed through the attic, making me jump. A box had toppled over, spilling out its contents. I froze, straining to hear. There it was again, the unmistakable sound of footsteps. They were coming closer. My heart raced, but I stood paralyzed, staring into the dark abyss of the attic. In the dim light, I saw a shadow flicker across the wall. That's when fear truly set in. I turned around quickly, ready to confront whatever was behind me. I didn't belong here, and now it felt like I was not alone. The footsteps grew louder, echoing in the silence. Then everything went dark. I blinked into the darkness, my heart hammering in my chest. My mind scrambled for answers. Had I just lost my place in time? The darkness felt suffocating, as if it had weight. I strained to hear, to feel something, but silence covered everything like a thick blanket. Gradually, my eyes adjusted. I realized I could make out the outlines of the attic again, the dim light from the window providing just enough illumination to discern vague shapes. The footsteps had stopped, leaving an eerie calm. I wanted to call out, but my voice felt trapped in my throat. Then I heard it, a whisper, barely audible, like a rustle of leaves. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone sent a chill racing down my spine. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't alone. Something or someone was there with me, just beyond the reach of the frail light. I need to move, I told myself, gripping the edge of the trunk. I slipped my fingers around the edge and let the weight of the photo slip from my hand. I didn't dare take my eyes off the dark corner behind me. I took a step back and bumped into another box, sending it tumbling to the ground with a crash. The sound echoed through the attic like a gunshot. "Hello." My voice shook as I called out, each syllable trembling in the stillness. There was no answer, just the crackling of the old wood as I held my breath. I scanned the room. Nothing. Then I saw it. An indistinct figure stood in the corner. It was tall, almost skeletal, and dressed in something that resembled an old-fashioned dress, tattered and draping unnaturally over the figure. My breath quickened, a painful lump forming in my throat. My instincts screamed for me to flee, but fear rooted me in place. The figure didn't move. A moment felt like an eternity as our eyes seemed to lock, the air heavy with unspoken words. My mind raced with questions. Why was it here? What did it want? I looked back toward the attic door, weighing my options. Should I run or confront whatever this was? I felt a pull, a reason to stay. And then I remembered the photographs. Maybe this figure was connected to them. Maybe it was part of that family. I swallowed hard, my fingers tingling with adrenaline. This could be more than just a ghostly encounter. Slowly, I took a step forward, closer to the figure. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice steadier than I felt. But the figure only tilted its head slightly, a gesture that felt almost curious. Suddenly, an agonizing pain shot through my side. I gasped, clutching my stomach as an unseen force shoved me backward. I fell hard against the wooden floor, fear sending shockwaves through my body. The figure flickered out of sight like a snuffed candle flame. I scrambled to the attic door, my breath quickening. I needed to leave, but that whisper echoed in my mind, pulling me back. Was I meant to uncover a truth that lay buried long ago? Just as I reached for the door, I heard the whispers again, clearer this time. Help us. That's when I knew. Whatever was in this house wasn't ready to let me go. I felt the cold floor beneath me as I hesitated at the door. My heart thundered loudly in my ears, drowning out the whispers that swirled around me. Help us. The words echoed again, sending another ripple of fear through my chest. I knew I should go. I knew that every instinct screamed for me to run. But something kept me rooted in place. If they were trapped, if they needed help, could I really leave without at least trying to understand? The figure's presence lingered in my mind like a stubborn shadow. I took a deep breath and turned back toward the corner where it had stood. The space felt charged, alive with an energy that made the hairs on my neck stand up. What do you want? I called out. The attic consumed my words, swallowing them into the stillness. Then, without warning, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath condensing in front of me, a faint mist in the chilly air. Panic surged within me, urging me to flee. But then the whispers returned, writhing in the air like serpents. Help us. We are here. Who? I shouted, hoping my voice would cut through the noise. What do you need? I braced myself, scanning the shadows once more. I felt foolish for talking to an empty room, but I had to try. Suddenly, a box near the wall shifted. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. It glided along the floor until it stopped with a muffled thud. I stumbled backward, terrified yet intrigued. What was happening? And then, one by one, the photos tumbled out onto the floor, the old photographs I had handled just moments before. The fragile paper scattered, the images of smiling faces and cherished moments flipping over to reveal their backs, blank and unhelpful. But one was facing me, its surface illuminated just enough by the weak light. It was a picture of the same figure I had seen, staring back at me with vacant eyes. The dress looked identical, worn and torn. Its otherworldly presence felt even closer now, impossibly real. But as I reached down to grab the photo, the air shifted. I felt an urgency deep in my bones, a need to act before it was too late. The whispers grew louder, transforming into frantic pleas. Find us. I glanced around the attic, trying to make sense of what was happening. There had to be more to this than just a ghost. My mind raced as I pieced together fragmented clues. Find you where? I questioned the air, hoping for an answer. The shadows shifted, twisting like smoke around me. There was a sudden crack from the other side of the attic. The sound broke the tension, driving my pulse to a frantic pace. I turned sharply, eyeing the door I had almost reached earlier. What was going on? Someone or something was in the house with me. I took a step toward the door, my stomach knotting with worry. Maybe I wasn't alone after all. Uncertainty gripped me. Should I investigate further, or put distance between myself and the unknown? I hesitated, my mind's conflict mirrored the chaotic whispers. And then, I heard a child's voice, sweet and innocent, breaking through the murk. Help me. Something inside me snapped. Ignoring all caution, I stepped deeper into the attic, determined to confront whatever lurked in the shadows. The attic felt like a different world as I took another step forward. The air was thick with tension, wrapping around me like a vice. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but curiosity surged to the forefront. I needed to know what was going on. Hello. I called out, struggling to sound brave. Is someone there? Silence hung heavily in the air. The child's voice echoed in my head, a haunting echo of innocence. It felt wrong, so wrong. The cold draft flickered around me, tugging at my clothes, urging me to leave. Just then, I noticed something glinting near the edge of the attic. My eyes focused on it, and I walked over, driven by a force I couldn't ignore. As I got closer, I realized it was a small metal locket, half buried beneath a pile of dust and debris. I knelt down to pick it up, brushing off the layers that had accumulated over time. The locket was old, intricately designed, with delicate etchings. I turned it over in my hand and felt a strange warmth radiating from it. I could almost hear soft whispers again, urging me to open it. With a flick of my thumb, the locket sprang open. Inside was a tiny, faded picture of two children, a boy and a girl, both smiling brightly. My heart skipped a beat. They looked so familiar, almost like the faces from the photographs scattered on the ground. I glanced back down at the photo of the figure, the one in the tattered dress. "Who are you?" I whispered. The whispers intensified, echoing in my ears. "Help us. Remember." I stood up abruptly, the urgency in their voices igniting a fire within me. I needed more answers, but where to look? I turned, scanning the attic, every corner now seeming darker, more foreboding than before. The child's voice whispered again, clearer this time, "Find us. Please." My heart raced. It felt as though the very walls were closing in on me. I took a step back, adrenaline surging through my veins. The moment I shifted my weight, there was that cracking noise again, the same eerie sound that had shattered my focus moments before. It resonated from the far side of the attic. I spun around, focusing on the doorway. Something moved. My breath caught in my throat as I waited, frozen, every muscle tense like a coiled spring. I could see a shadow shifting just beyond the threshold, as if someone or something waited for me to react. "Show yourself," I shouted, my voice wavering. But the shadow didn't advance, it hesitated, as if considering its next move. I gripped the locket tightly, a faint sense of comfort amidst my fear. Then I heard it again, a soft, desperate call. "Help me." It echoed through my mind, and just like that, I realized I wasn't just dealing with spirits. There was something sinister lingering in this house. I took a deep breath, gathering myself. I had to keep going, to uncover whatever truth lay hidden, even if it posed a danger I couldn't fully comprehend. Then everything went dark. When the darkness swallowed me, I felt as if I could no longer breathe. Panic set in. My hands moved instinctively to find something solid, a wall, the floor, anything to ground me. But the void didn't yield. It was as if the shadows were alive, swirling around me, wrapping tighter and tighter. Just when I thought I might scream, a thin beam of light pierced through, flickering like a dying candle. My breath came back, shaky and uneven. I squinted, trying to follow the light to its source. It pulsed before me, like a heartbeat, drawing me closer. As I edged toward it, I noticed shapes taking form in the dim glow. Furniture I hadn't yet seen, the remnants of a child's bedroom. A sturdy wooden chest, a doll lying abandoned in the corner, its button eyes glinting. I felt the pull of the locket again, urging me to explore, to confront whatever was waiting inside that chest. My heart was racing, but I found myself walking forward. Every step felt heavy and cautious. The whispers, now a low drone, sang in my ears, "Help us." I reached the chest, taking a deep breath before lifting the heavy lid. A cloud of dust erupted into the air, and I coughed as the particles danced in the light. As the haze cleared, I peered into the depths of the chest. Inside were papers, crumpled and yellowed with age. But what caught my eye most was a small diary, its leather cover cracked with time. I picked it up and opened it carefully. The first page was filled with scribbles from what appeared to be childlike handwriting. "We play here," it read. "Hide and seek until the moon breaks." My heart ached. Who were these children? But as I flipped through the pages, things took a dark turn. The entries became erratic and disturbing. The dark whispers, one page said, trailing off into frantic scrawls. Thoughts of fear, of being watched filled the pages, running alongside the innocence of childhood. That's when I heard it again, a distinct sound, like footsteps echoing down the hallway outside. My stomach dropped. They weren't just whispers anymore, they bore the weight of something real, something tangible. I glanced back at the attic door, my mind racing. "Who is there?" I called out, hoping against hope for an answer that made sense. Silence settled in like a blanket, but it was soon broken by a soft creaking sound that drew closer. My pulse quickened. I couldn't sit in this attic any longer. I had to know what was outside, but dread weighed heavy in my chest. Standing there, in a place no one had entered for years, I felt the full weight of my decision loom before me. I tucked the diary under my arm and edged toward the doorway, determined to confront the source of the footsteps. As I stepped out, the oppressive air thickened, suffocating me. I followed the sound with a mixture of trepidation and determination. Then, abruptly, I froze. Someone was in the house. I stood there, frozen in place. My heart thumped loudly in my chest, drowning out everything else. I could swear I heard breathing, a soft, uneven sound that sent chills darting down my spine. I couldn't see anything, but the tension in the air pulled at me, urging me to take action. I pulled the diary closer to my chest, a flimsy defense against whatever was lurking. My mind raced with thoughts about the footsteps. Were they real? Or was I losing my grip on reality? I knew I had to go further down the hallway, but every fiber of my being screamed at me to turn back. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward, inching down the hall. The wooden floor creaked under my weight, a loud protest in the silence. I glanced back at the attic door, half expecting it to slam shut on its own. "Hello?" I called out again, my voice shaky. No answer. Just the sound of the house settling around me. The footsteps had stopped, and I strained to listen. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe I was just jumpy after reading the diary. But then I heard it again, a soft thump followed by a dragging noise. My breath caught in my throat. I moved toward the sound, my hands trembling as I reached for the wall for support. I turned a corner and found myself in a narrow hallway that led to the kitchen. The dim light above flickered, making shadows dance along the walls. I hesitated, ready to turn back, when suddenly the back door creaked open. I didn't dare move. The rain outside pounded heavily against the siding, filling the air with a rushing sound that mingled with my heartbeat. Then I saw another shadow, shifting in the doorway. My instincts screamed at me to run, but curiosity held me still. "Is anyone there?" I asked again, my voice barely above a whisper. The shadow didn't answer. Instead, it stepped into the kitchen, the shape becoming clearer. A figure, draped in what looked like a tattered coat, stood at the threshold, drenched from the rain. I squinted, trying to make out details, but it felt like looking through a foggy window. "Who are you?" I shouted, panic rising. But only silence followed. The odor of dampness wafted through the air, heavy and stale. I could see the figure moving, half illuminated in the strange light, as it reached out slowly. That's when I remembered the diary. I needed to know more about this place, more about the children. I shifted my weight, still gripping the diary tightly, but kept my gaze locked on the shadow. In that moment, everything felt interconnected: the whispers, the footsteps, the figure before me. And beneath it all, a growing dread bubbled up. I had ventured into something far beyond my understanding. I took one step back, then another, heart racing wildly in my chest. I am not afraid," I lied. The figure only listened. Slowly, deliberately, it stepped closer, and just as the flickering light gave one last burst, everything went dark. I was suddenly enveloped in blackness. I blinked rapidly, trying to force my eyes to adjust to the darkness. My heart raced, an erratic drum in the silence that felt suffocating. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the smooth surface of the table in the kitchen. The air was thick with humidity and something else, fear, maybe. I swallowed hard, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. "Hello?" I called again, more desperate this time. The silence was deafening, pressing down on me. I turned slowly, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever had stepped into the kitchen moments before. But I was met with nothing but shadows. Just when I thought I was imagining the figure, I heard a soft rustle like someone shifting. My breath caught in my throat again. I held onto the table for support, fighting the urge to bolt for the door. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone, the only source of light I had. The screen illuminated the space enough for me to see the kitchen, cluttered and neglected. Dusty plates were stacked high in the corner, and the sink was filled with murky water. I could almost feel the history of this place seeping through the walls. That's when I noticed something on the floor, illuminated by my phone's light. A small, tattered object lay half hidden beneath a chair. I crouched down, heart thudding in my chest. As I reached out for it, my hands touched something cold and hard. I yanked it into the light, a child's toy, a weathered wooden horse. It was strange and unsettling. My mind raced back to the diary. Hadn't it mentioned children playing in the house long ago? The image of laughing faces danced behind my eyes, only to be replaced by the eerie silence that surrounded me now. The thumping noise broke through my thoughts again, louder this time, echoing in the silence. I swung around, pointing my phone's light toward the sound, feeling as though each pulse of the noise was shaking my very bones. "Stop it!" I yelled, masking my fear with anger. I heard something shuffle behind me, an unmistakable movement. I turned, and there it was again, the shadowy figure, closer than before. My heart raced, pounding against my ribs, and I backed up against the wall, the cold surface grounding me. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice cracking. It took a step nearer, and I could finally see its face illuminated by my phone. My pulse quickened even more as I made out the features, wet hair hanging down, lips drawn tight. It wasn't quite human, as if it were a ghost that had stepped out of a nightmare. I couldn't tell if it was a child or something much older, but its eyes were wide with despair. Then, in a moment of clarity amidst my terror, something clicked. I remembered the last lines of the diary, "They never left." Before I could process that thought, the figure vanished, retreating into the dark corners of the kitchen. My heart raced faster, a scream bubbling up. I glanced back at the door, weighing my options. Did I stay? Did I run? But then I heard it again, the unmistakable sound of dragging footsteps, now drawing closer, relentless. There was no escaping this encounter. I had entered its world, and now it was time to confront it. And just as I braced myself for whatever came next, something cold brushed against my hand. I looked down. The wooden horse was no longer there. It was in the child's grasp. I stared at the child, frozen in place. The wooden horse, now gripped tightly in its tiny hands, looked even more worn, as if it had absorbed the pain of time. A silent scream caught in my throat. I wanted to flee, to run far away from this place, but my feet felt glued to the ground. The child's eyes were locked onto mine. They were enormous, filled with an inexplicable sorrow that made my stomach churn. I felt an overwhelming sense of urgency, as if it wanted to tell me something. I forced myself to breathe, even though my chest felt heavy. "Please, just, talk to me," I whispered, desperate for a response. The room was still, but I could hear the rain battering against the windows outside. The storm matched my racing heart. The child tilted its head, and for a second, I thought I saw something flicker in those eyes, a hint of hope. But it vanished quickly, replaced by the weight of sorrow. I didn't know how to reach this lost soul, and the inky darkness around us felt thicker somehow. "Who are you?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. I was afraid that any louder, and it might vanish again. The child opened its mouth, but no words came out. Instead, it took a step closer, and my instinct was to step back. I felt the wall press into my back, enclosing me. I couldn't look away as the child reached out, pointing towards something behind me. I hesitated but turned slowly, my phone's light cutting through the dark. Nothing but a wall of shadows. I quickly jerked my head back to the child. "What do you want me to see?" Its small hand slowly lowered, and it tugged its wet hair back from its face. Then, in a movement that felt impossibly slow, it pointed again towards the corner of the kitchen. Trepidation settled in my bones. I shifted my phone's light to that spot, revealing a dusty old trunk half hidden behind a stack of boxes. The surface was scratched, and it looked ancient. I took a step toward it, but my instinct screamed for me to stop. "Don't," I said out loud, but I found myself inching closer. I knelt by the trunk, my heart racing. I could almost hear whispers from the past, secrets demanding to be uncovered. The child watched me intently, its expression unchanged. I hesitated, my hand hovering above the latch. "What's inside?" I asked, glancing back at its weary face. Something deep within me wanted to believe this child held the key to the house's mysteries. I clutched the edge of the trunk as if it could anchor me to reality. Fear coursed through my veins, but curiosity pushed stronger. I flipped open the latch, and the trunk creaked open. Just as I dared to peer inside, the sudden sound of breaking glass shattered the silence. I jerked away, heart racing, my phone slipping from my grip. In that moment, the child's eyes widened in panic. "Run!" It seemed to scream without words. Before I could comprehend its warning, the kitchen lights flickered on, illuminating the room in stark brightness. But the child was gone. Instead, I stood alone with the trunk gaping open and the palpable sense that something had shifted. I felt a chill run down my spine, realizing I wasn't just in a haunted house. I was part of a deeper story, and I was no longer alone. My instincts screamed at me to escape, but something else rooted me in place. Fear and curiosity mingled, and I knew I had to figure out what was hidden within those wooden confines. As I reached for my phone on the floor, a low whisper floated through the air, and I froze. "They're watching." The sudden surge of dread gripped me as the whispers intensified around me, a cacophony of urgency that vibrated through the very walls of the old kitchen. I could still feel the remnants of the child's expression etched in my mind, a look that pleaded for understanding, for liberation. They were waiting. I leaned toward the trunk again, the creaking wood beckoning like a siren's call. "What's inside?" I whispered, more to myself than the shadows closing in around me. Cautiously, I peered into the gaping maw of the trunk, my heart pounding louder than the rain outside. Inside, I found crumpled papers, old letters, yellowing notes penned in messy handwriting. I didn't touch anything just yet. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed since the lights brightened. The air felt heavier than before. I glanced around the kitchen, half expecting the shadowy figure to re-emerge. Maybe it had returned, poised to defend its territory, but instead, there was just silence, thick and suffocating. I picked up an old letter, unfolding it with trembling fingers. It was addressed to a family member, dated nearly 50 years prior. My eyes frantically scanned the words. The letter spoke of worries, a concern for the children, how they played at odd hours and whispered to shadows. It was filled with a deep sense of foreboding, a familial bond weighed down by the unknown. "They always come back," it ended, scribbled at the bottom, almost as if the writer had lost hope. My mind raced as I tried to piece everything together. The children? Were they haunting this place still? I shuddered at the thought, but the evidence was palpable in the pages surrounding me. Another letter caught my eye, its ink smudged where someone had clearly tried to erase words painted in fear. This one warned of a hidden room beneath the house, where they could not reach the family or their children. My breath quickened. Was this the key? Suddenly, a violent crash echoed from somewhere deep in the shadows behind me. My heart leapt to my throat as I spun toward it. The figure or whatever it was could be waiting, growing restless. With each passing second, the whispers intensified, and my instincts screamed at me to run. "Run, run," they whispered, melding together, swirling into a frenzied chant. My eyes darted toward the kitchen door. I knew this house wasn't safe. The photographs, the diary, the child, they were all a tapestry woven from dark history that I was now part of. I took a step back, but the floor creaked ominously beneath me. I had to choose, confront whatever had taken residence here or flee into the unknown. My hand instinctively reached for the diary still tucked under my arm, the only proof of everything I had uncovered. I could almost hear the child's voice again, so faint yet so insistent. Help us. Was this really what it meant to be stuck in limbo? Or was it just my mind's way of unraveling the very fabric of sanity? Determined, I dashed toward the back door, my heart racing wildly as I flipped the latch and threw open the door. The rain battered against my face, but I felt the weight of the house bear down behind me, whispering secrets I may never fully comprehend. The storm outside was relentless, but nobody was except me under it. I rushed away from the house, my heart pounding in my ears as I sprinted down the pathway. I didn't look back. I couldn't. But even as I fled, the questions swirled in the morning light: what truly roamed the halls? Was there more beneath the surface? I felt a strange connection to the children, to the history that seemed to pulse with life even as I left it behind. I moved to a different city soon after that night. Sometimes, on rainy days, I imagine the whispers echoing softly behind me, beckoning me back. I think about that house, the flickering shadows, the desperate pleas. But mostly, I try not to think about it. Because I can't help but wonder if I really escaped at all.